Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 808. I'm going to try and keep this short since I'm dealing with a cold here and I don't want to start coughing in the middle. So let's see, my opponent went d4, I went knight f6, knight f3. So I've got kind of a normal position for a d4 sideline, a sideline where white has not played the c4 move, and he goes bishop g5. There's all kinds of choices here. White could still play with c4, transpose back into main lines, e3, bishop f4, g3, etc. But this is the Torre attack, and a couple of main moves here. e6, a simple move, just preparing to take back with the queen if he exchanges there, and preparing to play c5 by opening up that diagonal for the bishop. So e6 is a fine move. Knight to e4 is maybe the most interesting choice here, trying to gain a tempo on the bishop. And this is fine for black as well as white. I mean, it's probably about even. Black probably equalizes in this line. But it's a little bit tricky. Let's see, c5 now. If you look at this main line, black actually stays a pawn down because white is somewhat annoyingly keeping this pin on, so you can't move the d pawn or the e pawn forward. So g6, preparing to develop the bishop here, castle, maybe move the queen, then the e pawn can go forward, and black is just fine. Although black is black is a pawn down at the moment. White has an extra pawn, so that's a pawn sack line, but it's okay for black as well. Anyway, it's another way to play this, and maybe a little more correct than the way I played it. But I looked up this c5 move later with the chess engine, and it seems like it's a fine way to play as well. So I would be willing to repeat this. Let's see, e3 or taking right away are the main moves. If he takes, I mean, this is the downside of playing c5 first, is you're just allowing this exchange here. And you can take back either way with the g-pawn or the e-pawn. If you take with the e-pawn, even though it's not in the opening book, this is an interesting position to play. Black has, the material's even, black has the bishop pair, and black has open lines, in exchange for which black's pawn structure is a bit damaged with this isolated pawn and these doubled pawns. But because the open lines and the bishop pair, that's enough compensation for the damage to the structure. So an interesting position for black to play, and it should be okay. And there's also the taking with the g-pawn as well. And then e5, building up a big center that way. It's another way to play it. So either of those are okay. He chose not to exchange, but to play e3, and I went e6. And if we look at the opening book here, you can see, let's back up a few moves. Yeah, you can see we're in a rare line here, but after he plays e3, and I go with e6, we're back into a more populated section of the opening book. So basically we transposed into the line where I started with e6 and then followed up with e5, c5. And I think this is an okay position for black. Let's see, he decided to take, not one of the main choices here, but still okay for white. I mean, I felt this helped me a little bit. It allowed me to develop my bishop with one move, but the bishop maybe needs to be repositioned. It's not necessarily the right square for the bishop. Knight bd2 or c3 are the top choices there, though. But like I said, this seems to be okay for white as well. And then we're just out of the book here. It's this move here, c3 at this point, is probably a mistake. Having opened things up a little bit, white should probably continue to play that way. He hasn't traded off his bishop, so, and in this position, white has the bishop pair still. Black has, I mean, both sides have both their bishops, so neither side has a bishop pair advantage. And this c4 move is just more active. It gives a place for the knight to develop, and if I take the pawn, it provides a good square for the bishop. So let's see, knight c6, not taking is the main move, and knight c3. And you see that white has a much more open position, it's much easier for white to develop his pieces in this kind of setup than what he played in the game. c3 just blocks in the knight, and this bishop is outside the pawn chain, but white has kind of a cramped position here, and so white is just a little better. Black is just better, I mean, in this position. Let's say I go knight c6, he goes bishop d3, castle. Queen c2. So he's setting up this battery. I have to respect that and move the pawn out of the glare of the battery. And he retreats. And I play e5. And through these moves, the chess engine is not really impressed with any of White's moves there, and Black's advantage has been slowly increasing. And this helps. This exchange helps. And around here, the advantage has increased to a whole pawn in Black's favor. Let's see. And he went bishop e2 here. There's a better way to deal with this problem. I mean, there's this problem that I'm going to push this pawn forward and fork those two pieces. So he has to deal with that somehow. But the better way to deal with it is just to push the e-pawn forward, stop that pawn, and there's no reason for White to be afraid of these trades here. White is reasonably well developed. Maybe he's a little concerned because he hasn't castled yet, but he can castle, and there's no way I can stop him. So just play e4 here. That's the way to play it. So he retreated his bishop, and I developed my last piece. It was knight bd2, getting his last piece off the back rank. Chess engine thinks he should just castle here. He ended up castling on the other side, so you can see this wasn't in his plan. That's why he took time for this knight bd2. But well, you can see if you just look at kind of the distribution of the pieces on the board, Black controls the center. Black has all of his pieces out and basically owns 5 rows of the chessboard, while White only owns 3 rows. So pretty good edge for Black in this case. And after 2 more moves, let's see, I just bring a rook to the center, preparing to put my rooks on the d file and the c file, and he castled queenside. And at this point, the chess engine already gives a winning edge to Black. So a computer would win this position 100% of the time. Basically, it's gives a minus 2.7 as the evaluation, so 3 pawns or a piece. So that's a pretty big edge for Black here. Anyway, I went bishop f5. Actually, I was expecting him to play bishop d3. I forgot about the tactic. Of course, if he plays, well, the funny thing is the chess engine says bishop d3 is the best move anyway. But if he plays this way, I can exchange first. Or I could have pushed right away, but then I can do the fork, and he has to sacrifice a piece to, and he gets 2 pawns for the piece, but that's not enough compensation. And like I said, it's just a winning edge to Black here. But queen d3 is even worse, because now his king is not going to be able to get over to safety, and his queen is a target over here on the queen side. That'll gain me some tempo moves to launch my attack on the king side here. Anyway, he ignores all that and proceeds to oh, no, I play the move a6, which was is my move here after queen b3. Play the move a6 after I figured out he couldn't afford to take on queen b7. It's nice to check these things. But after I bring my rook here, the queen has no squares except for c7. And then I can bring the other rook up here, and the knight. The knight is defending both of those rooks. The queen is defending the knight. And his queen has nowhere to run. I was thinking the queen might escape via a5, but the knight guards that square. So the queen is just trapped here. So, in fact, taking the b7 pawn would have been a mistake. So White decides to go for just a king-side attack and sort of ignore what's going on the queen side. There was not any great defense on the queen side. There was no great defensive moves available anyway, so maybe it's not a bad choice. The point is that White is already losing because of earlier mistakes. But I think I did a good job of finishing this game off. So b5, just preparing to open up lines on the queen side with my pawns. Let's see, he goes g4. I keep my bishop on this diagonal because I want to control his the space around his king there, keep his king from getting to that square. Actually, I went to g6. I didn't go to h7. Okay. And then, let's see, he went rook d to g1, bring his rook over here. And well, I threw in knight a5, hitting his queen. For a second, I thought the queen was trapped, but it does have one square it can go to. And then pushed on with b4. So preparing to open some lines here. So he tried knight b3. We just took it off and traded one pair of pawns like this. And then got this check in, and notice how nicely the bishops are cooperating. One of the powers of the bishop pair is that they can control a solid block of squares like that. So when they get near the king, it's dangerous. or when they're pointed at the king, it's dangerous. So the king has to run to d2, and it's all over. I just have to figure out how to open up lines to get to the king. So I went with d4. It looks like that was a good move. He took, and I took, and he took with the knight, trying to keep the lines closed. So I just sacrificed the exchange here. That was a good move. In fact, the chess engine after the exchange sack is already giving forced mate in 10. And yeah, it likes this move, bishop b4, check. King went to e3, and that's a mate in 1. So that's not the best he can do. After the bishop b4 check, yeah, I was expecting the king to run back here to c1. And I didn't have the rest of this worked out. I mean, a mate in 7 is kind of hard to spot. But, well, just from the look at it, you can tell that it must be good for black. All of my pieces are pointing over here towards the king side, and the rook is ready to jump in as well. So, and white's 2 pieces are pointing at my king side, but his counterplay is just too far away. So he's just a couple steps behind in getting anything going here, so it's just not going to work. But anyway, the most accurate play here is this move, queen to g5 check, which I don't know if I would have found. I might have found the move queen to f4 check, which is pretty good. I mean, it leads to a winning material edge, but doesn't mate. So the queen g5 check, the nice point about this is that, well, he has to move if he doesn't want to get mated immediately, like queen here, queen takes, is mate, because the bishop is guarding the escape squares. So his only king move is king b2. I mean, he could throw in a pawn move too, I suppose, to distract me. But the idea is the queen can swing along the 5th rank here to the other side of the board. Let's see, if he tries to block the bishop, this queen can come in this way, and let's see, if he goes to c2, the queen can check from a2. If he goes to b1 and bishop to c3, leads to an unstoppable mate. So anyway, that's how it would have ended, but he played the quicker mate, king e3, so I found rook e8 check and mate. So when I played that, I wasn't even sure that was mate, but I noticed that my queen was guarding his escape on this side, so this check, the point of it was just to force him to move his king back. It says that his king can't move back because the bishops are cutting off his escape squares. So it's a nice mate where every piece that I've got is taking part in it. So anyway, fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon.